The day I opened my college acceptance letter was the same day I learned my parents had taken $80,000 from my bank account. At the time, though, I had no idea that my future had already been spent. The envelope looked ordinary. White paper, university logo in the corner, my name printed neatly across the front. But my hands were shaking when I opened it. For a second, I just stared at the first line. Then I read it again. And again. Congratulations. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. After 8 years of working, saving, and putting my life on hold, the word felt unreal. My name is Lillian Carter. I'm 28 years old, and that letter in my hands was the closest thing I had ever held to a future. I sat on the edge of my bed in the small room I'd lived in since high school. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Clara. Did the letter come? I typed back with trembling fingers. Me. Yeah. 3 dots appeared instantly. Clara and I sent a photo of the letter. Her reply came 3 seconds later. Clara Lillian Carter, future college student. I laughed quietly. Future college student. I repeated to the empty room. For the last 8 years, my life had been simple. Morning shifts at the hospital pharmacy, night shifts at a cafe across the street. Sometimes I would walk out of the cafe at midnight smelling like burnt espresso and think, just keep going. I rarely spent money. I still slept in the same bedroom I had grown up in, drove an old car that barely started in winter, and picked up extra weekend shifts whenever someone called in sick. Every paycheck. I moved money into the same savings account. $10, $50, sometimes $200 if I worked enough overtime. Slowly, that account had grown to $87,000, not because anyone helped me. In the Carter family, I had always been the one expected to manage on my own. My sister Vanessa lived differently. She quit jobs. She borrowed money. She showed up at home at 2 a.m. smelling like tequila and perfume. My parents always said the same thing. She just needs another chance. I folded the letter carefully and placed it back inside the envelope. That was when I heard footsteps in the hallway. A moment later, my bedroom door opened. My mother stepped in first. My father followed behind her and quietly closed the door. He didn't smile when he saw the envelope in my hand. His voice came out slow. Lillian, we need to talk. I frowned. About what he looked at the envelope. Then at me. Your savings account. My stomach tightened. What about it? My father inhaled slowly. Then he said something that made the room feel suddenly smaller. Before you celebrate, there's something you need to understand. What exactly had they done to my money? My father didn't sit down. He stood near the door like he had already decided how this conversation would end. My mother hovered beside my dresser, fingers twisting the edge of her sweater. Something was wrong. I held the envelope tighter. What's going on? My father exhaled slowly. It's about Vanessa. That alone told me enough to feel a knot forming in my stomach. What about her? He rubbed his jaw. She had an accident last night. The word accident sounded too calm. I looked at my mother. Is she hurt? No, Mom answered quickly. She's fine. A pause followed. Then my father added quietly. The other driver isn't. The room went quiet. I lowered the envelope. What happened? My mother's voice dropped. Vanessa had been out with friends. I didn't need the rest of the sentence. She was drinking, I said flatly. My father didn't deny it. She ran a red light, he admitted. Hit an SUV. My pulse started climbing. How bad the driver was injured, he replied. Hospitalized. And Vanessa. She was arrested, Mom whispered. I stared at them. So what does this have to do with my savings? My father folded his arms. The other family's lawyer said they were willing to settle the damages immediately. Settle. They agreed not to push for more serious charges if the costs were paid right away. I frowned. Doesn't insurance cover that? My father shook his head. The insurance company refused. They said the policy doesn't apply if alcohol was involved. My stomach dropped. How much 80,000? The number sat in the air like a brick. I blinked. That's a lot. Yes, my father said quietly. Then my mother spoke. We didn't have time to arrange a loan. The lawyer said the offer wouldn't stay open long. I felt a cold feeling spreading through my chest. What does that have to do with my account? My father looked directly at me. We used the money from your savings. For a moment, I thought I had heard him wrong. For a moment, my brain refused to process the sentence. You. What? There wasn't time to discuss it, he said. My chest tightened. You took my college savings. We were trying to keep your sister out of prison. You didn't even ask me. Vanessa shifted on the couch near the window, arms crossed. My father's voice hardened. You're part of this family. Families help each other. Heat rose behind my eyes. Did you even think about what that money was? For his answer came quietly but firmly. You're strong. Lillian, you'll rebuild. No one moved. No one apologized. My hands shook as I opened my banking app on my phone. The screen loaded. The balance appeared. $14.27. I looked up slowly. How much did you take? Vanessa was leaning against the window when I looked up from my phone. She didn't look scared. She looked irritated. Can everyone calm down? She muttered. It was an accident. The words landed like gasoline on a fire. An accident, I repeated. She shrugged, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Yeah. For a brief second, I thought I saw something else in her face. Not confidence, something closer to unease. But it vanished quickly. My father stepped in before I could say anything else. Your sister made a mistake, he said firmly. I stared at him. A mistake. Images started flashing through my mind. Vanessa quitting her marketing job after 3 months. Vanessa calling Dad at midnight because she couldn't pay rent. Vanessa showing up at our door smelling like alcohol and laughter while my parents rushed to cover for her. Every single time, the same sentence followed. She just needs another chance. Vanessa rolled her eyes now. You're acting like I planned this. Did you drive drunk? I asked. Silence. My father cleared his throat. That's not the point. It is the point. Vanessa crossed her arms. You're not even using that money yet. I turned toward her slowly. What? She gestured toward the envelope still in my hand. You haven't even started school. The room felt colder suddenly. So you figured you'd spend it first. That's not what I meant, she snapped. My mother stepped closer, her voice soft and almost pleading. You're strong, Lillian. I already knew what was coming. You'll find another way. The words felt strangely familiar, as if my entire life had been summarized in one sentence. Vanessa makes the mess. Lillian finds another way. I looked down at my phone again. $14. 8 years of overtime shifts. Gone in a single night. No one in the room seemed to think that was the real problem. I folded the university letter carefully and slid it back into the envelope. My father watched me. Where are you going? He asked. I grabbed my jacket. Out. Out where I opened the bedroom door. To the bank. My mother frowned. For what, I stepped into the hallway. To find out exactly how my future disappeared. The bank was quieter than usual that morning. A few customers waited near the counter. Someone was filling out a deposit slip. The printer behind the desk hummed softly. I walked straight to the front desk. The teller glanced up. Good morning. I need to close my savings account. Before she could answer, another voice spoke from behind her. Lillian. I turned. Margaret Doyle stepped out of the glass office at the corner of the branch. She had been managing this bank for years, long enough to watch my savings account grow one small deposit at a time. She smiled at first, then she noticed my face. Come sit with me, she said gently. Her office smelled faintly of coffee and paper. She closed the door and sat across from me. So, she said, opening her laptop. What happened? I kept my voice flat. My family needed the money. Margaret paused. Needed all of it. I nodded once. She typed something and pulled up my account history. I watched the screen reflect faintly in her glasses. Then she frowned. That's odd. What I asked. She clicked into the transaction details. This withdrawal triggered a large transaction review this morning, she said slowly. Your account has never had a withdrawal anywhere near this size. My stomach tightened. She scrolled further. Your deposits are usually electronic transfers from your jobs, she murmured. Yes. But this withdrawal wasn't electronic. She enlarged the document on the screen. A withdrawal authorization form. My chest tightened as I looked at it. Margaret leaned closer to the monitor. That's strange. What is... She clicked another file. When accounts are opened, we keep a signature card on file, she explained quietly. She pulled up the older document. Then she placed both files side by side on the screen. This one, she said, pointing to the first document, is your original signature from when you opened the account. Her finger moved to the second form. And this is the authorization used for the withdrawal. She stared at the two signatures for a long moment. Then she slowly rotated the laptop toward me. Lillian, her voice had lowered. You need to see this. I leaned forward. At first glance, the signature looked like mine. The letters were similar. The shape was close, but something about it felt stiff, forced, and above the signature line was the name of the person who had completed the withdrawal. Richard Carter, my father. Margaret folded her hands slowly. Tell me something, she said carefully. Did you sign this form? I stared at the form. For a moment, my brain tried to convince me there had to be some mistake. The signature looked like mine. The shape was close. The letters leaned the same way. But something about it felt wrong. No, I said quietly. Margaret didn't respond right away. Instead, she reached into a drawer and pulled out another document. This, she explained, sliding it across the desk, is your signature card from when the account was opened. I leaned closer. My real signature sat at the bottom of the page. Margaret placed the withdrawal form beside it. The difference was obvious now. My signature curved smoothly. The one on the withdrawal form looked stiff, forced. I've handled your account for years, Margaret said gently. You sign every deposit slip the same way. She tapped the second signature. This isn't your handwriting. My chest tightened. The name on the withdrawal form stared back at me. Richard Carter, my father. The air in the office suddenly felt heavier. So he just walked in here, I muttered, and took the money. Margaret shook her head slowly. He filled out the authorization form and presented identification. With my name. Yes. I swallowed, and nobody questioned it. Margaret's voice stayed calm. The signature matched closely enough to pass the initial verification. And the account had been opened years ago when your father helped you set it up. I frowned slightly. He helped open it. You were 20 at the time, she said. He was present during the account registration. She paused. But something about the form caught my attention during the large transaction review this morning. My hands were starting to tremble. He forged it. The word felt sharp in my mouth. Margaret didn't contradict me. If this wasn't authorized, she said carefully, it could qualify as financial fraud. Fraud. A word that sounded too serious to belong to my own family. I leaned back in the chair. For years, I had believed one thing about my parents, that they favored Vanessa. But this was different. This wasn't favoritism. This was theft. Margaret studied my face. Lillian. Her tone softened. Do you want to report this? Margaret didn't rush me. She gave me time to breathe. Time to stare at the two signatures on the desk until the difference between them felt painfully obvious. Finally, she spoke again. There's someone you should talk to. She wrote a name and number on a notepad and slid it across the desk. Samuel Bennett. He's been the bank's legal advisor for years. An hour later, I was sitting in a small office across town. The brass plate on the door read, Samuel Bennett, attorney at law. Samuel Bennett looked to be in his late 50s. Gray hair, calm eyes, the kind of person who spoke slowly because he didn't need to raise his voice to be heard. Margaret had already forwarded him the bank documents. He flipped through the printed copies quietly. No reaction, no surprise. Just careful attention. After a few minutes, he placed the papers on the desk. Your father signed this form pretending to be you, he said. The words sounded strange out loud. Yes, in legal terms. He continued. That's forgery. He tapped the withdrawal record, and the money taken becomes an unauthorized withdrawal. I folded my arms. So, what happens now? That depends on what you want. I frowned. What do you mean? Samuel leaned back in his chair. Some people choose not to pursue cases like this, because it's family. He nodded. But the law doesn't make that distinction. He picked up the form again. Fraud is still fraud. I stared at the signature. My father's handwriting pretending to be mine. If I file a complaint? I asked quietly. What happens? The bank will document the fraud and freeze further activity connected to that withdrawal, he explained. We can also file a civil case to recover the funds. And the forgery that could lead to criminal charges. The room fell silent. I had spent 28 years avoiding conflict with my family, but this felt different. Samuel studied me for a moment. Then he said something that shifted everything. The real question isn't whether they're your family. He slid the document toward me. The question is whether they stole from you. I stared at the paper. Then I picked up the pen and signed the complaint form. What would my family do when they found out the letter from the bank arrived 2 days later? Certified mail. My father called me the moment he opened it. Get home, he ordered. His tone made it clear this wasn't a request. When I stepped into the house that night, the tension was already waiting. My mother stood near the kitchen table, eyes red. Vanessa leaned against the counter, scrolling through her phone. My father held the letter in one hand. He didn't bother greeting me. You reported this to the bank. His voice was sharp enough to cut through the room. I reported the fraud. Vanessa scoffed. Oh my God. Lillian. She tossed her phone onto the counter. You're actually doing this? I folded my arms. You took $80,000 from me. It was for the accident, she snapped. You think I wanted that to happen? That's not the point. My father stepped forward. The point, he said slowly, is that you involved a lawyer? You forged my name. We were trying to keep your sister out of prison. The words echoed through the room. My mother wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Please, she whispered, don't tear this family apart. I stared at her. Tear it apart. My voice felt steadier than I expected. You tore it apart when you signed my name. My father's jaw tightened. We were protecting your sister, and you decided I didn't matter. Vanessa let out a short laugh. You're being dramatic. Am I? The room went silent. For a moment, nobody moved. Then my father spoke again. His voice had gone colder. If you keep pushing this, don't expect to come back here. I looked around the house I had grown up in. The same kitchen table, the same hallway, the same people who had just erased my future without asking. Then I nodded slowly. Maybe that already happened. I turned toward the door. Behind me. My mother started crying again, but no one stopped me. What would happen when the court finally heard the truth? Courtrooms are quieter than people imagine. No shouting, no dramatic speeches, just the sound of papers sliding across wooden tables and the low murmur of voices waiting for someone to tell the truth. By the time the case finally reached court, several months had passed. Paperwork, hearings, endless documents. But that morning, everything had come down to this room. I sat beside Samuel Bennett at the plaintiff's table. Across the room, my parents sat together in stiff silence. Vanessa avoided looking at me. The judge entered, and the room rose. "Be seated." Samuel stood first. "Your Honor, this case concerns an unauthorized withdrawal and forged authorization taken from the plaintiff's personal savings account." He slid the bank documents toward the judge. Margaret Doyle stepped forward when she was called. She spoke calmly, hands folded in front of her. "I have managed Ms. Carter's account for several years." Samuel nodded. "Did Ms. Carter authorize the $80,000 withdrawal?" "No." "How can you be certain?" Margaret lifted the two documents. "This is the signature card from when the account was opened." She placed it beside the withdrawal form. "And this is the signature used for the withdrawal." The judge leaned forward slightly. "They are clearly different." Samuel turned toward my father. "Mr. Carter, were you the person who completed this withdrawal?" My father shifted in his seat. He didn't answer immediately. Margaret spoke instead. "Yes, Mr. Carter presented the authorization form and identification at the branch." The next testimony came from the police officer who had handled the accident report. "Ms. Vanessa Carter ran a red light at approximately 1:12 a.m. Was alcohol involved?" Samuel asked. "Yes." "And did she leave the scene?" The officer glanced at his notes. "She attempted to drive away before being stopped." The courtroom went still. Vanessa stared at the floor. My mother began quietly crying. Samuel finished with one final statement. "Your Honor, the plaintiff spent years building that savings account. It was taken through forgery to resolve the consequences of someone else's actions." The judge closed the folder slowly. "I've heard enough." He looked toward my family. "Court will recess briefly before I deliver the ruling." As people began stepping out of the room, my father finally glanced in my direction. For the first time since this began, he looked uncertain. What would the judge decide about everything they had done?